Rain came like a long-held breath finally let go, rinsing dust from the tin roof and turning the lane to mud. Elliot Ward stood at the stove, circling a wooden spoon in slow arcs. The power had blinked twice and surrendered. Rosemary slept in the next room, thumb tucked under cheek. Potato, onion, the last of the chicken stock, a bay leaf saved for nights that needed a reason. He tasted, added salt with 2 careful taps. Cooking was his liturgy. He did not say grace, he simmered it. At the window he watched the rain widen. Headlights showed once, swerved, dimmed. He lifted the latch on the door and set the lantern on the porch, in case the dark needed a place to land. He heard them before he saw them, the motorcycle coughing at the gate, then failing towards stillness. 2 figures hunched beneath the rain, silhouettes of leather and grit. Elliot felt the old caution rise, news stories, diner talk, the way people said certain letters like a warning. But caution was no match for the habit he had built of being somebody's shelter. "Come in if you want," he called. "It's warm." They hesitated. The woman glanced toward the road. The man reached to push the bike farther under the eave, then gave up. They stepped onto the porch, water running from their sleeves, and into the house where the lantern drew a circle around a table meant for 3 and now set for 2. She was wind-bitten cheekbones and wary eyes, hair braided tight. He was a wall, soft at the edges only where the rain had gotten to him. Patches on their jackets said more than names. He stood with his hands loose, as if holding anything would be mistaken for a weapon. "I've got soup," Elliot said. "No charge. We're not that kind of place." The man's mouth did a quick thing that might have been almost a smile. The woman nodded, a small movement that said she did not barter with hunger. Elliot ladled broth into bowls until the steam made the room feel like a forgiving sauna. Rosemary padded to the doorway, hair a tangle and rabbit hanging by one ear. She looked at the strangers, then at her father, and climbed onto his hip without a word. He kissed her temple the way you tell a child the world is tethered. "What do we say?" he whispered. "Welcome," she murmured, and the woman blinked like someone had struck a match. They ate with the kind of quiet that comes from weather and miles. The man's shoulders unlatched first. The woman wrapped her fingers around the bowl as if warmth were a currency you could save. The lantern sputtered and caught again, stubborn as a promise. "Name's Ash," the man said after a while, voice gravel dragged slow. "This is Mira." "Elliot," he offered. "And this is Rosemary. Rose when she's happy. The day seems to change her name." Myra's gaze moved around the room. The drawing on the wall. The little pair of boots by the door, drying on their sides. The photograph half tucked into the frame. A woman laughing at something that had already passed. Mira did not ask. A gust rattled the window. Elliot set another log on the fire, then came back and placed a towel near the woman's elbows without comment. They 8 seconds. The bay leaf did its quiet work. The clock, old and unhurried, kept its own counsel. When the rain softened, Ash stood. "We should head," he said. "You didn't have to." "I did," Elliot answered. "Roads are roads." Mira tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You ever need anything?" She paused, as if the words were braver than she felt. "We don't forget. Sometimes the pot makes more than 2 can finish," he said. They left a wet footprint of gratitude on the threshold. Tail light red, then gone. Elliot stood at the door longer than he needed to, the lantern a small sun in his hand. Rosemary fell asleep on the couch. One sock wrinkled halfway off as if it planned to go where she had been. Morning came. Cloud light pooled on the table. Elliot packed a lunch for Rose. Peanut butter, an apple with the bruise cut out, a note that said, "I'll be here." He walked her to the bus and waved until the road forgot them. He stacked wood. He rinsed the bowls, set the pot upside down to dry, then decided against the finality of that and turned it upright. The door stayed on its catch. Somewhere far off a dog barked at a shape that would not hold still. Then he heard it, a sound like distance deciding to arrive. At first he thought it was thunder returning for a second try. The air trembled, windows humming. He stepped onto the porch, hand to his brow. Over the rise they came, 5, 10, too many to count at first. Then he tried anyway because counting is how you give awe a handle. Motorcycles poured into the lane, chrome under a slice of sun, black and red and worn denim like a procession that had traded incense for gasoline. Engines idled, then quieted by degrees until all that was left was the shiver of what had just been loud. Neighbors edged to their fences. Ash killed his engine at the gate and set his boot on the ground with finality. Mira took off her helmet, hair damp at the temples, eyes lit with something the storm hadn't washed away. Behind them the riders aligned, precise without being rigid, as if this many people could share a spine. Elliot swallowed. He wasn't a man who enjoyed being looked at. He had learned to make himself small enough to fit inside his own plans. Now the road put a hand on his shoulder and asked him to stand where others could see. Ash stepped forward. His jacket smelled of rain and oil and a year of roads. "We said we don't forget." "I fed you," Elliot said, half protest. "You held the door open," Mira answered, soft enough the wind had to lean in. "People talk about miles. They forget how long a night can be." Then, like a tide shifting, helmets lifted. Gloves were pulled off. 101 riders stood in their boots on the soaked earth and faced a farmhouse that had never before required a crowd. The engines went dead until the world found its old heartbeat again. No one spoke. Ash didn't make a speech. Mira didn't hand over a patch. They gave him something else instead. The stillness of a gathered body that had decided together to respect a quiet man. In the silence, Elliot heard small things. A chain settling, rain finishing its sentence on a leather sleeve, the tick of his old kitchen clock counting only what it could hold. A school bus had doubled back. Drivers break rules for stories. The front door opened and Rosemary hopped down with a substitute driver who waved and waited. Rose ran, then slowed. She came to his side and slid her hand into his. "Daddy," she said. "Are they friends?" "They are people who remember," he said. Mira knelt so she could meet Rose's eyes. "Thank you for sharing your table," she said. "It was big enough." "We have more bowls," Rose offered. Laughter moved through the riders, quiet and unsharp. Someone rolled forward a box from the back of a bike. It wasn't wrapped. It didn't need to be. Ash lifted the lid, and inside were groceries and a few other things people think they shouldn't need until they do. Flour, oil, new boots for a small person with a habit of outrunning her socks, a jacket with a hood, coffee. No one made it charity. It was simply community arriving in the language it knew. Elliot tried to refuse, then saw Rose watching him, learning what a person is permitted to accept. He nodded. "We'll put it to work," he said. Ash placed a small metal pin on the porch rail where the lantern had been. "For the door," he said. "For the next storm." The procession did not last long. Engines woke again, staggered, then harmonized. Before Ash climbed on, he looked past Elliot into the house and saw the pot upright on the stove. "You keep that ready," he said. "I do," Elliot answered. They left like the tide leaves, without apology, taking only what belonged to them and leaving the rest salt-bright. When dust settled into being dirt and the lane remembered it was a lane, Elliot and Rose carried the box inside. She tried on the boots and stomped once. He set the coffee on the shelf like a book he meant to read slowly. Then he went to the stove and lifted the pot. It was not heavy. He washed it, dried it, and set it down upright again. The spoon went across the rim like a bridge. Rose colored at the table, drawing bikes that looked like dragonflies with engines. "Do people always come when you make soup?" she asked. "Not always," he said. "Sometimes the world is just hungry and doesn't know our address." She kept drawing. He lit the lantern though the day had brightened, because ritual is not for the dark. It is for the heart that forgets and wants to be reminded. Dusk came on. Elliot stood at the door with the pin cool in his palm. He pressed it into the jamb beside the latch where he would see it every time his hand moved to open. The mark wasn't for decoration. It was a hinge for memory. He poured 2 bowls. One for him, one for the empty chair that belonged to anyone who needed it. When he set the second bowl down, something in the room aligned, like a compass surrendering to a north it had missed but never lost. He lifted his spoon, then paused. In the quiet, he could still hear the engines, not as noise, but as proof that sometimes the loudest thing in the world is a kindness done in a house too small for crowds. Later, when Rose was asleep and the pot was rinsed and the pin had learned its new home, he wrote 2 words on a folded scrap and slid it under the spoon's handle the way you tuck a letter under a door for the future to find. Door open. He turned down the lantern and the house held that sentence like a vow. Sometimes it takes the echo of 100 engines to teach a man how to hear his own quiet again. And if this story found a warm place in you, stay a while with us. Share it with a friend who believes in second chances. Subscribe for more nights of quiet kindness, more mornings where the world remembers your name, more small doors held open against the rain.